Best Life 30, your 30-day journey to creating the best life possible for yourself. You can just watch this video, or if you want to sign up for the entire series for free and get the companion bonus worksheets that go with this video, check the link in the description below. All right, so today is day 17, and we're going to learn how you can be more productive.
So for the next 90 days, your first 90 minutes at work, make it focused on your single most important project. I'll repeat that again. For the next 90 days, the first 90 minutes of your workday, focus monomaniacally on your single most valuable project. I call it your game-changing move. So it might be creating a new piece of code that will revolutionize the marketplace. It might be a new product that when you launch it will fill a need within your industry that no peer is currently providing. I don't know what your game-changing move is, but this is your poetry. This is your magnum opus for the next 90 days. So what most people do is, people who are playing at victimhood, people who are in the 95%, people who are making excuses about ordinary results in their life, a lot of them are not doing the things that would give them legendary results. And what they do is they get to the office, and rather than using prime time for A activities, they use their best hours watching dancing cats on whatever it is, whatever the video platform is. They spend their best hours surfing the internet, looking at blogs. They spend their best hours playing with notifications, reading notifications, chatting with friends who are not really their friends, but really they're just bored, so they're distracting themselves, which is just a form of medication, because potential unexpressed turns to pain, and they're in a lot of pain, and it's subconscious, and they haven't done the work to know it. So really, they've created these drugs of choice, like too much email, too much web surfing, too much chit-chatting, too much looking at funny looking videos that make them laugh in the moment, that make them feel happy and give them a short burst of dopamine and maybe a little bit of serotonin, which is the pleasure neurotransmitter, and that's how they get through their day. And all I'm saying is there is so much distraction available to you out there that if you are not acutely careful, it will dominate your days. What I'm really trying to say is this: a ritual for you to run and dial in and hardwire to the point of automaticity, that's the word the researchers use when a habit becomes your new normal, over 66 days, is the 90-91 rule. And to give it to you again so you really remember it, for the next 90 days, your first 90 minutes, create a tight bubble of total focus so that no one can distract you. Turn off your devices, put them in a little plastic bag, put some reminders on your door, maybe some Post-it notes that this is my tight bubble of total focus for the next 90 minutes. Tell your team, tell your loved ones, maybe put a do not disturb sign on your door. They'll laugh, and explain it to them that for the next 90 days, I will spend 90 minutes away from distraction, away from technology, away from interruptions, focusing on my magnum opus, focusing on the genius project that I want to bring into the world, because I will never mail it in. I will always bring it on, and I'm going to do this for the next 90 minutes, and I'm going to optimize it and iterate it every day, and I'm going to bring my full bandwidth, because what makes a genius, they all have one trait in common: they were able to spend extended periods of time in isolation, focused monomaniacally on their most valuable project.
Make a damn schedule and stick to it. Okay, so what's the rule with the schedule? It's not a bloody prison. That's the first thing that people do wrong. They say, well, I don't like to follow a schedule. Well, it's like, well, what kind of schedule are you setting up? Well, I have to do this, then I have to do this, then I have to do this, and then I just go play video games, because who wants to do all these things that I have to do? It's like, wrong. Set the damn schedule up so that you have the day you want. That's the trick. It's like, okay, I've got tomorrow. If I was going to set it up so it was the best possible day I could have, practically speaking, what would it look like? Well, then you schedule that. And obviously there's a bit of responsibility that's going to go along with that, because if you have any sense, one of the things that you're going to insist upon is that at the end of the day, you're not in worse shape than you were than at the beginning of the day, right? Because that's a stupid day. If you have a bunch of those in a row, you just dig, you dig yourself a hole and then you bury yourself in it. It's like, sorry, that's just not a good strategy. It's a bad strategy. So maybe 20% of your day has to be responsibility and obligation, or maybe it's more than that, depending on how far behind you are. But even that, you can ask yourself, okay, well, I've got these responsibilities. I have to schedule the damn things in. What's the right ratio of responsibility to reward? And you can ask yourself that, just like you'd negotiate with someone who is working for you. It's like, okay, you got to work tomorrow. Okay, so I want you to work tomorrow. And you might say, okay, well, what are you going to do for me that makes it likely that I'll work for you? Well, you could ask yourself that, So maybe you do an hour of responsibility and then you play a video game for 15 minutes. I don't know, whatever turns your crank, man. But, you have to negotiate with yourself and not tyrannize yourself. Like you're negotiating with someone that you care for, that you would like to be productive and have a good life. And that's how you make the schedule. It's like, and then you look at the day and you think, well, if I had that day, that'd be good. Great. And you're useless and horrible, so you'll probably only hit it with about 70% accuracy, but that beats the hell out of 0, right? And if you hit it even with 50% accuracy, another rule is, well, aim for 51% the next week, or 50.5% for God's sake, or because you're going to hit that position where things start to loop back positively and spiral you upward.
This is a productivity killer that most of us don't know about it. Has to do with waking up. Now, when you think about being productive, if you got a big day and you got a bunch of stuff you need to get done, most of us focus on when. When do I need to get up in order to get everything done? That's not what you need to focus on. The thing that really impacts your productivity is how. How do you wake up? And here's the deal. If you're somebody like I used to be that hits the snooze button, that kills your productivity for at least 4 hours. Let me explain. You have to understand this. The snooze button creates a mental state, a state in your brain that is called sleep inertia. It's so bad it actually has a name. Here's what it is. When you and I go to bed, we sleep in cycles. We sleep in cycles of like 90 to 110 minutes all night long. And right before you wake up, the sleep cycles, they stop and your body goes into a wake-up mode, okay? Your brain is starting to slowly wake up so that it can start the day. When your alarm goes off, you're in wake-up mode. Your brain is now ready to do its best work. However, if the alarm goes off and you hit the snooze button, guess what you've just done? You've just made your brain go back into a sleep cycle. Your brain is now in a mode that takes about 90 to 110 minutes to complete. You just rebooted the system. So when your alarm goes off and you get up 15 minutes later, you're now in major trouble. And the reason why you're in trouble is because your brain is still locked into a sleep cycle. And this is where sleep inertia comes in. You know how when you hit the snooze button, you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, I did not get enough sleep last night. You feel so groggy. You kind of feel like this mental hangover. That is sleep inertia. Here's the deal. Your brain, the cortic region of your brain, which is responsible for decision-making, attention, alertness, self-control, that sucker is still in a sleep cycle. And now that you're awake, it's going to take the cortical region almost 4 hours to actually snap out of that sleep cycle. That's why you feel groggy. It's because the part of your brain that's responsible for critical thinking and being alert, it's actually still asleep. If you don't already do this, you've got to train yourself to be the kind of person that doesn't use the snooze alarm. Because when you hit the snooze alarm, you're not only putting your brain in a state of sleep inertia, you are directly impacting your productivity, your alertness, and your brain processing for the first 4 hours that you're awake. That's making life harder. I'm all about making life easier. So tomorrow, when the alarm goes off, I don't care how tired you are, I don't care how much you don't want to get out of bed, I want you to remember this. I want you to remember that you've got to wake up and give your brain its best shot to do its best work. And the way you're going to do it is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, turn off that alarm and get up. Seize the day and go be productive.
If you're not doing block time, here's what your day might look like. You have all these different slots of time, right? And you're just gonna plug in as you go through the day. You're gonna plug in, I'll work some there, and I'll work some there, and then I'll try to cram stuff up. Right at the end of the day, I'll try to cram that sucker in. Any crammers? Okay, just checking. No judgment. You're just not going as fast as you could. That's all. Crammers, I love crammers. Yeah, just like, because they're easy to get to move faster, because you do have that diligence of when there's a deadline and it's on, you can go, which really serves you. But we got to take you from a crammer to a preparer to a high performer. And the way that we do that is to look at this and go, listen, if you keep leaving all these time slots to randomness, what happens is they start to get filled with the big D. Distraction. Some reason it seems like this hit home for some people. I don't know why. How many recognize what I'm talking about here? So now you add up, take this out. You might not be thinking too seriously about it, but let's say that's like a day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 work hours. You didn't know I drew that on purpose. If you leave your time to randomness, you are stealing from your greatness. If you leave your time to randomness, you are stealing from your greatness bit by bit, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, month by month, quarter by quarter, year by year, and decade by decade. And it's the little things like this where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't get anything done. Because you've got all these random approaches to your day.
If you just write down all your to-dos in a day, and you're an overachiever, there's no way you can achieve them all. So what most people do is they stop even writing them down because they don't want to be disappointed with themselves. Early on, I realized I need to focus not on what do I need to do, but what do I want? And I created a system called RPM. It's just 3 questions. And the first question is, what do I want? What's the result? That's the R. Because you increase the RPMs in an engine, you can get there so much faster with less effort. So I was like, okay, what do I really want? President Clinton called me one day and he said, I'm going to be impeached in the morning. What should I do? True story. And I said, could you call me sooner? That's the first thing, right?
Oh my God.
Tomorrow morning, right?
Wow.
And then I asked him the question, you're asking me what should you do? You have to first answer, what do you want?
Yeah.
What's the result? Do you want to stay in office? If you want to stay in the office, do nothing. They're not going to impeach you. Easy for me to say, but they don't have the votes. You know they don't have the votes. I said, if you want to have the respect of the American people, then you have to do something different, right? If you want to feel congruent, like you're living what you might have to do something different. So when you know what the target is, and then the next thing you want to know is why? What's my purpose? Because like someone says, I want to be a millionaire. Well, purpose is more powerful than the object. Why? You know, I want to provide a home for my mom. We grew up poor. I want to do this for my dad. I want to do this for my children. There's more power in that than the object. So I need to know the object, but I got to know the purpose. I remember one day when I was like 23, 24 years old, and I came home, and this is before, I'm old enough, it was before email and the internet, that's how ancient I am. And it was phone calls. And I had 127, or I'm making the number up, it was like almost 130 messages. And I looked down and I was like crestfallen, like how am I going to call these people back? I just got off the road, I'm burnt to the ground. And I looked at some of the people, President of the United States, billionaire client, and then, just a kid, I'm like, 5 years ago I would have killed them one of these phone calls, right? I can't bitch about this. But what I realized is I need to think about each person and say, why am I calling them? What's the outcome? Why am I calling them? And then I was ready to go. And then the last part in RPM, the M is the massive action plan, or the MAP. And so I brainstormed what are all the possibilities of what it would take to achieve this. And then the most important part is I know I'm not going to do all those. So I picked the 20%, they're going to give me 80% of the result. I go asterisk those, because otherwise you get addicted to your to-do list and you can have lots of movement and no achievement. I cut through it all, because once I know the outcome and why, you might have a better way to get there. My team might have a better way to get there than I'm coming up with, so I share it. Or we all just see it and we all know what to do. It becomes so clear, and you don't get caught up in all the to-dos. To-dos will make you crazy. What you gotta shift to is outcomes, results, purposes, the why, and then a map or a massive action plan, and then tighten that baby down to what really can be accomplished.
When usually people are distracted and they say, well, I can't stay focused.
what they really mean is they're getting a lot of stuff done, and but they're not so sure if they are actually doing things that actually produce any results. Does that make a difference? So the key number one to extreme productivity is you need to be absolutely ruthless when it comes to the outcome. What is it you're trying to do? What is it you're trying to create? What's the outcome that you want? Instead of just getting busy, because I believe busyness is also a form of laziness. That is not, just because you're busy, it doesn't mean you're productive. Just because you fill up your calendar with all kinds of stuff to do, it doesn't mean you're producing any results, right? Just because you're splashing in the water, it doesn't mean you're swimming, right? So that's what you want to do. Be absolutely ruthless. Don't just ask, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? How can I do this better? Why am I even doing this at all? Is this important? Can I eliminate this? If I don't do this, would it even make a difference? Would people notice? How would this contribute to my life or to my bottom line as a business? When you are very clear and you are ruthless about the outcome, now guess what? You're more productive. And what you notice is, it doesn't matter what is it that you want to do, whatever result you want to create, the 80-20 rule always applies. Only 20% of what you do contributes to 80% of results. So you constantly want to be thinking about, okay, am I doing the important 20%? Or am I just wasting time with that 80% that actually doesn't matter that much?
What is batching? To explain it in simplest terms, we can talk about laundry. All right, so you wouldn't do your laundry every time you have a new pair of dirty socks. You wait for a certain critical mass of dirty laundry to accumulate, and then you do the laundry. Why? Same with the post office. If you have many different types of mail that are going to come together that you need to mail, you're going to wait for a certain critical mass as opposed to just going there for every single letter, because there's a setup cost. There is a task switching cost, getting in the car, driving there, spending the gas, spending the time, laundry, putting it all together, detergent, and so on. Right? So the time and labor involved in doing one letter or 20 or one pair of socks or an entire basket of clothing is the same. And you want to be both effective and efficient with your allocation of resources, i.e. time. If you apply those to business, you can apply them in 1,000,001 different ways. And I'll give you a few examples. One of the most common, I suppose, directional questions or specifics that I'm asked about is frequency. Well, do I batch on a daily basis? Do I batch on a weekly basis? Do I batch on a monthly or quarterly basis? And the answer is I do all of those things. But you don't have to try it all at once. And I would not encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to perhaps try one or two approaches and see what works for you. This is a very personal set of techniques. You develop a portfolio that works for yourself. Let me tell you a few things that I and others do. For instance, you might decide that on a given day, from the time you wake up until lunch is your primary creation period. This could be writing, it could be recording, could be anything that is proactively creative and synthesis. Then, once you have lunch, you are permitted to do administrative tasks, phone calls, email, triage, calendaring, and so on. I do this quite a lot, particularly from Tuesday to Thursday on certain weeks. On a weekly basis, I know the CEO of a very well-known startup, pretty much everyone watching this would know this company. And instead of batching on a daily basis, looking at his week, Monday to Friday, he might have day 1, administrative tasks, day 2, HR hiring, day 3, product, day 4, marketing. And on each of those days, he will focus on thematically or categorically those types of tasks. That is yet another approach. And very commonly, I will batch phone calls on Mondays and Fridays. And I would say even broadly speaking, this is voice-related tasks. So I will have phone calls and podcast recording on Mondays and Fridays. And this helps to prevent also interruptions and task switching that can result if you have miscellaneous phone calls and podcasts scattered throughout the week. Makes it very difficult to do deep work on anything that might require 3 to 5 hours of uninterrupted time. On a quarterly basis, you could look at batch producing or completing certain types of normally scattered activities. For instance, I am recording this video right now during a content generation week, where a week is blocked out once per quarter to focus on answering common questions that all of you or my readers or listeners have asked, and so on and so forth. On a, say, 6-month to yearly basis, I have started in the last few years batching travel. Why would I batch travel? There are many different reasons to batch travel. One of my reasons is that I want to practice being off the grid for extended periods of time to not only remind myself and prove to myself that it is possible to do that, and no, the internet will not stop, the universe will not end if you are unavailable and unreachable for certain periods of time, and also to rejuvenate, to recharge, being away from social media and keyboards, laptops, screens, and so on. Batching is one of the fundamental concepts that you need to understand. If you understand the principle, the reasons for it, the concepts, you can come up with your own examples to experiment with. And these are not permanent changes. Think of them as 2-week experiments. One tiny thing that you can test, assuming that it's on a daily or weekly basis, and try it out. See what works. Keep what works, reject what doesn't, add what is uniquely your own, borrowing from Bruce Lee with that. And before you know it, you will have a reliable, dependable way of making yourself more effective and more efficient, which is your bespoke iteration of batching.
Many of us have issues with productivity. Maybe we are overly productive, but we're feeling burnt out all the time, or we're not productive at all because we don't know where to start. I found personally, being in business for myself for the last 20 years, that I have been a little overly productive. I almost did too much, and I was constantly multitasking and making things happen and just moving so fast that ultimately I really burnt out. And I started feeling brain fog. I was feeling disoriented. I couldn't focus. I was feeling like, even though I for so many years was priding myself on the fact that I could get so much done at one time, I actually don't think I was being nearly as productive as I could have been. So I hit a bottom recently with this productivity overload, and I realized that I had to change my patterns. I had to change my ways. I was then blessed. I said a prayer. I said, I need some help with my brain fog, and I need some help with my productivity issue. And I, that day, got an email from the Dr. Oz show asking me to come on and do a segment with this lovely author and Dr. Mike Dow. And me and Mike had been in touch for many years, just because he had been an author. We were published by the same publishers. And Mike had written a book about brain fog. So that day, I'm like, thank you, universe. You're giving me exactly what I need. I go on Dr. Oz with Mike, and I'm backstage with him, and I'm like, listen, I'm feeling so chaotic, and I'm multitasking so much, and I feel like I've got brain fog, and I'm forgetting things. And he looked at me and says, how much are you doing at one time? And I said, oh, Mike, I'm doing 1,000,000 things at once. I have 1,000 tabs up on my screen. And he's like, these are big brain no-nos. And they're also productivity no-nos, is what he said. Because he said that the more I try to do and the more I try to multitask, the less I'm actually getting done. So he gave me a tip that I want to share with you that has changed everything for me. And his suggestion was to just do 5 things a day. To make a list of the 5 most important things that I need to do that day, and not do number 2 until I've completed number 1. And then once I complete number 1, move on to number 2, then on to number 3. And if I don't get through all 5 in one day, I'll just pick up the 5th the next day, or wherever I left off, I'll pick up the next day. And to really stick to that list and not move back and forth and not try to make 1,000,000 other things added on to that list, and just be really committed to that 5-task list. I did it. I started to just be very clear about the 5 things I was doing in a day. I told my team. I made a list in my Basecamp, which is where we keep all of our notes. And I made it really clear to myself, these are the only 5 things I'm doing throughout the day. As a result of making it super clear and conscious to myself that I was only going to do 5 things, I have been more productive. I have created more. I have been more intuitive. I have been more inspired, and I've been more creative.
Productivity is an economic measure of how much you output for the amount of time and resources you put in. Some people have figured out how to be naturally more productive than others per minute. And the way you do that is by having an instinct to ship, not an instinct to polish, to be perfect, to justify you're not shipping. That most people hesitate to ship, not because it's not ready, but because they're afraid. So I did a post about a year ago called Buzzer Management.
Okay,
And
we'll put a link to it below.
That's how you win at Jeopardy. The people who win at Jeopardy aren't better than the people who lose at Jeopardy, except in one thing. They press the buzzer before anybody else. And the only way to press the buzzer before everyone else is to press the buzzer before you're sure you know the answer. So as your brain is thinking, maybe I can get it, now you press the buzzer, and in that last moment, you're going to come up with something, right? So you agreed to do your Oprah talk. Was it done the day you agreed to do it?
Oh, hell no.
So, but you pressed the buzzer.
I did.
Right?
Yes.
You pressed the buzzer, which is going to require, so do I have a blog post coming out tomorrow? I do.
Yeah.
I actually pressed the buzzer 10 years ago. So I know that's going to happen.
Yes.
So I'm apparently super productive because I'm good at buzzer management. I'm good at saying, I have this much time and there will be a thing when I'm done.
Put your entire life on airplane mode. So don't try and ignore your phone or ignore the emails or ignore the Slack messages or whatever else that you have that dings and rings and pops up. That's like me telling Kuma to ignore this slice of salami. Ain't gonna happen. Who can ignore the salami? Who can ignore the salami? So rather than resist temptation, just eliminate it. And that means you have to put your entire life on airplane mode. Now, obviously, turn off all the notifications. So close all the tabs, close all the windows, turn off the apps. And especially for your phone, I suggest just turning the damn thing off. However, you also got to shut off some people too. And that means that you might have to tell your kids and your spouse and your coworkers that for the next 2 hours or 1 hour or 3 hours that you don't exist. Kind of like this. See? Nobody here.
I think there's different definitions of productivity. I mean, I think if you talk to 10 entrepreneurs, there's probably going to be 10 different definitions, right? I think productivity is a couple things. One, it's a productive life that's focused on and committed to producing and progressing towards your ideal vision. And I also think it's the use of your time, energy, intelligence, and resources in a manner calculated to move you closer to meaningful goals. And productivity isn't just results in getting things done. It's about creating free time for your family, doing what you want, and having 100% control over your future. I don't think it's about doing more faster. It's about doing the right things deliberately. So the first question I'd ask is, what are your biggest productivity killers? Like, what are the things that have killed your productivity in the past? Because if you don't become aware, we have to start with the ground level here. If you don't become aware of where you're wasting time, that will always come up month after month, year after year. So it can be distractions as far as social media. It can be internet sometimes. It could be sleeping in. It could be people interrupting you all the time, right? It can be lack of planning. Maybe it's your environment. But I challenge people, what are 3 to 5 productivity killers that have been hurting you in the last, let's say, 6 months? And I think when you do that, I think multitasking is one. I think notifications on the phone is one. But I challenge people, what 3 are costing you the most?
My final one, you got to get sick and tired of defeat. Aren't you tired of getting beat? Aren't you tired of being on the losing end? I want you to know what it feels like to finish something. I can't explain to y'all. My life has gone to a whole other level. When I finished that 4-year degree, when I finished that master's degree, when I finished my book, can I explain to you how my life has changed in just 1 month? The fact that people know I'm finished with the book. I'm getting engagements that I never got before. I got companies calling me that never called me before.